Ohio, took out the power for 50 million people. It started right here, East Lake, Ohio, on the hottest afternoon of the year. A power line sagged into a tree that no one had trimmed, and it tripped. The alarm that should have screamed, a software bug had already killed it. The operators were flying blind. So the load jumped, line to line, Detroit, Ontario, New York. In 7 minutes, the most advanced grid on Earth ate itself. 50 million people in the dark. This is chain reaction explained. On August 14th, 2003, 50 million people lost power in a single afternoon. It started with one tree in Ohio, and it became the biggest blackout in North American history. But the real story isn't the tree. It's that for hours, the people who could have stopped this couldn't see it happening. This is the anatomy of a chain reaction. To understand how it all fell apart, you first have to understand what the power grid actually is. It's often called the largest machine ever built, a continent-spanning web of wires, all locked together, all running as one. And it lives on a knife's edge. The power being generated has to exactly match the power being used, every single second. Get that balance wrong, and the system's frequency drift too far and equipment starts to trip offline to protect itself. So the grid is a constant, invisible balancing act, managed by operators and automatic systems across dozens of separate companies. On a normal day, you never notice it. On this day, that balance was about to break. It's a hot Thursday. Across the Midwest, air conditioners are running flat out, and demand is climbing. High demand means more power flowing through the lines, and more power means more heat. As transmission lines heat up, they physically sag lower toward the ground and toward the trees growing beneath them. At 1:31 in the afternoon, a large plant near Cleveland, East Lake Unit 5, trips offline. Losing it forces even more power through the lines around Cleveland and Akron. The strain is building. Now, none of this should have caused a blackout. The grid is built to survive the loss of any single piece. There are operators watching. There are regional coordinators watching the operators. There are alarms watching everything. But that afternoon, one by one, the eyes that were supposed to be watching went dark. Just after noon, the regional monitor, MISO, had switched off its main analysis tool, and its backup data was stale at 2:02. A line in southern Ohio brushed a tree and tripped. A warning sign missed. And inside First Energy, the utility running the Cleveland lines, the most important alarm of all was about to fail. Their alarm system had a hidden flaw, a software race condition buried deep in the code. Around 2:14, that alarm system silently froze. Every warning that should have sounded simply didn't. And for the next hour and a half, the operators believed everything was normal. It was not. At 3:05, the first big line goes, Harding to Chamberlain. 345,000 volts, sagging into a tree. Its power reroutes onto the next line, Hannah to Juniper. Now that line is carrying far more than it was ever meant to. 27 minutes later, at 3:32, Hannah Juniper sags into a tree, and it drops too. The load jumps again onto a third line, Star to South Canton, now running at 120% of its limit. At 3:41, Star South Canton fails. 3 major lines gone in 36 minutes. Each failure is a phone call that should have been made, an alarm that should have screamed, and still the control room is silent. Operators at neighboring utilities can see something is very wrong. They start calling First Energy, but First Energy still doesn't understand what's happening on its own system. With the big high-voltage lines down, all of their power floods onto the smaller lines below them. Those lines were never built to carry this much. They overload and they begin to trip, one after another. This is the moment a local problem becomes a regional catastrophe. This is the cascade. And now it moves faster than any human can react. In the final stretch, lines trip in seconds, not minutes. Power that was flowing one way suddenly reverses and surges the other, swinging across the grid like water in a shaken tank. Generators, sensing the chaos, disconnect to save themselves, and everyone that drops makes the balance worse. Detroit, Toledo, Ontario, New York, each region to survive cuts itself off from the collapsing grid. In about 7 minutes, more than 60,000 megawatts of power vanish from the system. The most advanced power grid on Earth is tearing itself apart, and no one can stop it in time. 50 million people across 8 American states and Ontario, Canada, go dark at once. It is the largest blackout in North American history. In New York City, the subway stops between stations in the dark, packed with people. Traffic lights die, intersections choke, and thousands begin the long walk home across the bridges. Airports shut down, trains freeze, water pumps stop, and tall buildings lose pressure to their upper floors. Cell networks jam as millions reach for their phones at the same moment. Some hospitals switch to backup generators, others struggle. In the end, the blackout is linked to nearly a dozen deaths. And the economic cost from a single afternoon is estimated at around $6 billion. Night falls on cities that haven't been this dark in decades. In some neighborhoods, people can see the stars over the skyline. So how did one tree in one corner of Ohio take down power for a fifth of a country? Because the grid is a chain, every part is connected to every other part, and that connection is its greatest strength. It lets power flow to wherever it's needed and lets regions back each other up when one runs short. But that same connection is also its greatest danger, because a chain doesn't only share power, it shares failure. A tree, a sagging line, an overload, a blind control room, a cascade, and then everything. No single failure here was fatal. It was the order and the blindness that turned a local fault into a catastrophe. The grid that afternoon didn't run out of power. It ran out of awareness. When investigators pieced it together, they found not one cause, but a chain of them. A utility that hadn't kept its trees trimmed, control rooms that couldn't see their own systems, coordinators who couldn't give a clear picture in real time, and safety rules that everyone was supposed to follow, but no one was forced to. For decades, the reliability standards that keep the grid safe had been voluntary guidelines, not law. After 2003, that changed. The rules became mandatory and enforceable, with real financial penalties. Utilities were now required to keep their lines clear of trees. Control rooms were rebuilt. Monitoring was overhauled. Today, thousands of sensors watch the grid in real time, hunting for the next failing line before it can spread. The blind spot that doomed 2003 is, in theory, closed. But the grid is not the same machine it was in much of the country. It is older and more strained than ever. The weather it has to survive is more extreme. Heat waves, ice storms, and wildfires now push it to its limits. And demand is exploding from electric cars, from air conditioning, and from vast data centers feeding the internet. We are asking more of the grid than we ever have on infrastructure, much of which was built generations ago. And there are new threats now, like cyber attacks, that the builders of this system never imagined. Somewhere out there, right now, a line is sagging toward a tree that no one has trimmed. The question was never whether one small thing could bring down everything that afternoon. The real question is whether, next time, someone will be watching in time to break the chain. This is Chain Reaction Explained, where we trace how one small thing brings down everything. If you want to see the hidden chains that hold our world together, and the ones that can bring it down, subscribe, because it always starts with one tree.